Hello and welcome back to my channel. I love BookTok. Being part of a bookish community as someone who organizes reading retreats and hosts an online book club is really amazing. And I also have to say I found a lot of good reads on BookTok, books that I am still thinking about today. But at the same time, I have also read some books that were atrocious, that were a waste of time and paper. So today we are ranking the popular BookTok books that I have read on a scale from 1 to 5. Obviously, before we go into the actual ranking, judging, opinions on these BookTok books, you need to understand my scale. How do I rank books? From 1, the worst ever, to 5, I love this book. Let's walk through it. 1 stars for me means I absolutely hated this book. I despise it. It annoyed me significantly. I wanted to throw it across the room at some point. And I need other people to know how bad this book is so they don't go and read it and waste their time. That is a 1-star book for me. A lot of the do not finishes that I will put into my Goodreads, and I have to say I rarely don't finish a book because I need the closure. I need to find out if it really was bad until the very end. It always is, but you know, I just need that closure. Either way, a 1-star read will usually be a do not finish for me, or a book that I wish I had not finished, but I still kept going because of that closure. 2 stars for me is I didn't like this book, but there were some redeeming qualities about it. That might have been the general concept of the book, that might be certain characters, the writing style, but in general, I still would not recommend this book or reread it ever again. 3 stars, this is actually a decent read. It's okay. I would say it's okay. There were some things that I didn't like about it. Again, could be the writing style, could be some characters, could be the ending, because the ending, especially in a book like a thriller or a romance, I think is really, really important. So if the ending isn't good, it's probably gonna be rather a 3-star than a 4 or 5. 4 stars, I absolutely loved this book. I would highly recommend it to anyone, but there were just some small things that didn't make it a 5-star perfect, everyone needs to read this read. And then of course we have 5 stars, which for me is I wish I had memory loss and I could reread this book again. Everyone needs to know about this book. It is perfect. No remarks, no comments. I will not accept any criticisms on this book. That is a 5-star read to me. Now you know my scale. Now you know how we are going to be judging these books. Before we dive into the actual ranking, a little disclaimer here. I am super curious to hear what you thought of the BookTok books that we're going to discuss in this video, so leave me comments below so we can have a chat. But also please remember that this is my personal opinion on these books. Your opinion might be different, and that is totally okay. That is the beauty of the publishing industry. There is something for everyone, and some books you will love, others you might not. That is just the joy of reading. Okay, let's get into it. I have looked at Goodreads list on the most popular BookTok books. Obviously, I haven't read all of them, but I have read quite a few of them, so I've put them up here on this little ranking scale, and we'll take a look at them. First up, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I actually like this book. That as a first comment to this book. I actually like this book, but I also didn't get the hype, you know? I like the concept of it, I like the execution, I like the writing, but I just don't think it's the most amazing book ever written, which I feel like a lot of BookTok people made it out to be before I actually jumped into it. So I would give this a solid 3.5 stars. We can also do half points here. Yes, I would recommend it. I might read it again, but it's also not the most perfect book ever. It's an okay book. It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. There we go. I feel like Colleen Hoover is a very controversial figure in the BookTok universe. Not just because of the whole It Ends With Us movie legal feud that is currently going on, but also because I just don't think her writing is very great. Like, it's just very basic. It's very simple. I feel like if you haven't read proper books in a while, and you want to get back into reading, then maybe Colleen Hoover's books are great for you. But if you read a lot of other books, you will just see that the writing isn't as polished, as sophisticated as it could be. Does that mean that all of her books are bad? No, they're just not really my cup of tea. And there's another Colleen Hoover book in this list that we will discuss in a second. But this one, I want to say it was a 2.5 for me. Like, it wasn't the worst book ever. There were some interesting parts in it. Obviously, the topic itself, you know, needs to be discussed. But yeah, I wouldn't read it again. Nor have I seen the movie, because I didn't like the book. Is that my mistake? Maybe the movie is great, but, you know, I've heard a lot of things about it. The Song of Achilles. This book I'm gonna give 4.5 stars. I haven't given any full stars so far, but I really enjoyed this book. I read this together with my in-person book club, so not the online book club that I run with Busy with Books, but we have a local in-person book club here, and we read this quite a while ago. I was a little bit skeptical at first because I had read Kirky by the same author 2 or 3 years ago, and that one just didn't really hit home for me. I am super into the ancient Greek mythology. I have always been interested in that period of time, so I also know quite a lot about this topic, from history classes in school to my own little research and the other literature that I've read. So that other book just didn't really hit home for me, but The Song of Achilles, I just thought it was so beautifully written, and the story, the relationship that they have, and especially also comparing it to the actual Odyssey and potentially also to the movie Troy, you know, a Hollywood movie of course, but at the same time it's super interesting to see how Achilles is being portrayed in the different versions of the story. So I would give this one a 4.5. Why I wouldn't give it a 5 is mainly because some of the chapters felt a little bit long to me. A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This is also quite controversial, I feel, in the booktok space. There's either people who love ACOTAR, the whole series, and then there's people who say it's the worst fantasy or romantasy that you could ever read. Personally, I really enjoyed the whole series. I read all of the six books after each other, and I really enjoyed them. I read them at the same time as my mom, so we have quite a strong connection through the books, and we often talked about what was happening in the different chapters, so maybe that is a positive memory that I have about this specific book series. But I think it's a great romantasy series to get started with this genre, especially if you haven't read any fantasy in a while or any romantasy in general. Will it work for you if you're reading more complex fantasies? I don't know, maybe, but maybe you also think it's too simple. But that's exactly why I think it's a great entrance point into the romantasy genre, because the world is not overly complex. You can get into it quite quickly. There's not, you know, a million different characters and creatures and worlds for you to understand. You can dive into it pretty quickly, and it can be a nice little introduction into this genre. So I would give this a 4. I am not going to rank all the individual books because through the board I thought they were all good. Like, I would read them again. The Invisible Life of Addie Larue. This one is gonna be a 2 for me. Sorry, I just really didn't get the hype around this one. I liked the general concept of it. I liked how, you know, she's forgotten by everyone pretty immediately. And is your life worth living if nobody remembers you? That kind of stuff. I think the concept was great. I just really didn't like the execution. I was bored throughout the book. It felt a bit repetitive, and I just couldn't really connect with the main character. So this one is gonna be a 2 for me. I didn't hate it completely, but it also, like, I wouldn't really recommend it, to be honest. Where the Crawdads Sing. I'm gonna give this one a 2.5. It wasn't the worst book ever, but again, I just didn't get the hype. Like, I wasn't super interested in the story, in the setting. It was a new setting for me. I haven't really read a lot of books about, like, the swamp life and this way of living, but I just couldn't really care about it, and I didn't like the writing style. Maybe that is exactly why so many people love it, for the poetic writing. I just didn't really care for it. So 2.5 stars. The Fourth Wing series, again, I'm not going to discuss all 3 of the books, or potentially 4 if you're seeing this in a few years' time. Fourth Wing, I would put at the same level as the ACOTAR series. They are very similar in my mind, as in, like, a good introduction to the romantasy genre. The Fourth Wing, obviously, there's dragons, which aren't as present in the ACOTAR series, but I quite like the concept. Again, is it a mind-blowing, crazy new concept? No, but I am a big Harry Potter fan, so already having boarding school, or like a school in a castle that students go to and where they're being trained in, like, magical fantasy stuff, like, that appeals to me. So that's why I read it, and I would say I enjoyed Fourth Wing more than Iron Flame and Onyx Storm, the second and the third book, but I think it's a great start into the romantasy genre. Maybe if you're used, again, like the ACOTAR series, if you're used to more complex fantasy, and if you want to, you know, really immerse yourself in that world with a full-blown universe that is explained in very much detail, then maybe this is not necessarily the book for you. But I quite enjoyed it, and I will be reading the 4th book when it comes out at some point. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I love this series. This is a 5-star for me. I just lapped it up. I read book after book. I was so happy that they were all published already, that I didn't have to wait for the next installment. I also watched the BBC series that is now, I think, on Netflix as well. I thought that wasn't as interesting as the book, or not as well done. Maybe I was just imagining the characters a little bit differently as well. But the books are just such a great read, such a great introduction again into the murder mystery genre. It's super easy to read. It would probably be characterized as young adult fiction, but I just really loved how easy it was to read. It was very bingeable. There's lots of different elements in the book, like a podcast script. There's emails, there is letters, there's text messages. So it's really engaging, and it keeps you going, and obviously you want to know what happened. So this book and the whole series, I can highly recommend. The Inheritance Games. I would give this one 3 stars, probably. I quite enjoyed the concept of it, but again, I can't really remember much about it. It was an okay read, but a little bit forgettable, not as memorable as I like my books to be. Yeah, I can't say much about it anymore. I would give it a 3. I have a good feeling about it when I think about it. Not a great feeling, not an amazing feeling. Yeah, It was okay. Would I necessarily read it again? Probably not. There we go, another Colleen Hoover book, Verity. This one I am gonna give 3.5 stars, which might surprise you since I gave the other Colleen Hoover book a 2.5. Verity, I think, is very different to It Ends With Us and other Colleen Hoover books, as it is a thriller, like a mystery, psychological thriller, and I quite enjoy that genre in general, so I thought this was right down my alley. Are some of the plot twists a little bit unrealistic? Yes. Is the writing the most amazing writing that exists in the world? No, but it was still a very good read, and I can see why people like it, and I'm very excited to see the movie that is coming out soon. The Silent Patient, I would give this one a 2.5 stars as well. It wasn't bad. I liked the writing, I liked the general concept of the book, but it just didn't really deliver for me. I thought the plot twist or the end was very predictable. Throughout the whole book I was like, yeah, surely it can't be that. That can't be the plot twist. But then it was, so I was a little bit disappointed. It was also a little bit unrealistic towards the end, but I enjoyed the writing, I enjoyed the general concept, but I just don't think it is worth the hype it's getting on BookTok. Daisy Jones and the Six is from the same author as The Seven Husbands of Evelyn and Hugo. This book I read as an audiobook quite recently, and I actually enjoyed it. I was really happy that I read the audiobook and that I didn't read the physical or the ebook version, because it is a documentary style book. What that means is basically they're interviewing all the different band members that this book is about. And the audiobook helped me quite a lot in understanding who was who and in following the story. And I think in the written version, that aspect would then fall away. So I was really happy that I listened to the audiobook. I liked the story, it kept me engaged, but at the same time I just didn't really care so much for the dynamics and the main characters. I don't know, they just didn't really do anything for me. I didn't really connect to them, so I also didn't really care much what was going to happen to them. So it was an okay read, but I, again, don't really see the hype that TikTok is bringing to this book. The Midnight Library, same as The Invisible Life of Addie Larue, I just like the general concept of it, the idea that, you know, you can see which other lives you could have had if you had made different decisions. I think that is a universal concept that mankind has struggled with or thought about for many, many, many centuries. But I just didn't really like the execution of it. I feel like it could have been done much better in a very different way, and it just didn't really deliver. Would I read it again? Probably not. Again, don't get the hype that BookTok is bringing to this book. The Crescent City series is another series by Sarah J. Maas. I would give this one a solid 4. I read all of the books right after each other, again together with my mom, so that was really fun. But yeah, it wasn't perfect. There were always some things that I didn't quite like about all of the books. In general, this was my first urban fantasy, so it basically plays almost like in the modern world. Like they have phones, they have laptops, they go out clubbing, which was really fun. The first time I read fantasy that wasn't in a fantasy world that kind of feels like the Middle Ages or, you know, the 17th, 18th century, but actually feels like modern world. So that was really interesting. Took me a little bit to get into that, but I quite enjoyed it. It was nice to read. It wasn't overly complex. A little bit different than the ACOTAR. I feel like there's less focus on the romantic relationship. Obviously, there is some smut in there. There is a couple that goes through certain challenges, but I didn't feel like it was such a huge focus compared to the ACOTAR series. And I quite enjoyed that because I'm not a big romance fan in general, so I don't really care so much about the romance in books. So this was perfect. More on the fantasy, the, you know, finding the bad guys, finding out what happened, and so on. So I quite like this one, would give it 4 stars. Caraval, I'm gonna give this one 1.5. This was probably my least favorite book in this whole BookTok lineup. I just didn't like, again, I like the concept of it. The concept of like there's this magical circus that you have to go to, and it takes place at night, and you need to solve like riddles and games, and it's like this magical world. That would be perfect for me. This is exactly what I love to read about, but it just didn't work for me. The writing was so bad. Sorry to say it, but at certain points I was like, did a child write this? I just didn't really care for it. Nor did I care about the characters. The plot twists were super unrealistic. I was just like, no, this one was close to throwing it across the room. I actually have the physical copy of it, so that would have been possible. I'm just glad that I got it from a friend and didn't spend any money on this, because that literally would have been a waste of money. So I don't recommend this. Again, then other people told me, you should read The Night Circus, which is a similar concept but with better execution. I started that one as an audiobook and I did not finish it. Not even did I try to finish it and force my way through it. I just straight up was like, no. Once again, similar concept, but still did not like the execution. So I don't know what it is with those two books. I just really didn't like them. The House in the Cerulean Sea, on the other hand, a straight up 5-star read for me. Is it the most complex book ever? No, it's quite straightforward. It talks about this very grumpy, sad man who works in like administration in the government, and his life is very grey and sad, and then he goes to this orphanage with magical creatures. They all have their special characteristics and are their own different magical creatures, and he comes there and he has to assess whether they have a good life, whether it's, you know, in line with the regulations of the government. And it's this heartwarming book about finding your family, about being different but not being afraid to be different. And it wasn't super deep, as in like you had to dig into the story to get to the main message. It was pretty obvious, pretty clear, and just a feel-good book to read in between some maybe heavier books with heavier themes. So I really enjoyed this one. I recently also read the second book, which I have to say I didn't really care so much about. I felt like it regurgitated that same message over and over again, just packaged up within a different story. So I didn't care all too much about that one. But the first one, highly recommend. You can read this at any time. It will make you feel warm and fuzzy on the inside, and you'll just be like, this was a cute read. I needed this. Babel by R.F. Kuang. I love this book as well. I'm gonna give this 4.5 stars. A great read. This book I feel like was written for me. You might not know this about me, but I love languages. I speak German, Italian, English, Dutch, a little bit of French and Spanish. So I love to learn languages, and I have always loved to understand how culture comes about, how language influences culture, how culture influences language, how words came to be. That is my thing. I really love that part of history and culture and art in a way. And this book is exactly that. It talks about the importance of language, the different languages, how they work with each other, how they influence culture, and it is based in the Victorian period in England. So the colonialism, but then Victorian age as well. And that is my favorite historical period. Not because I liked what the people did back then, you know, questionable, but it's a special interest period in time for me. So the language aspect, the culture aspect, the colonialism and Victorian era England all packaged up with some fantasy. Heaven. I thought this book was written just for me. So I lapped this up. I just kept reading. It's quite a chunky book, but I just didn't want it to end. Did it deliver 100%? Maybe not. That's why I'm gonna give it 4.5 stars, but I thought it was a great read. I would read this again anytime. It was a fantastic read, and I can't wait to read her new book, Catabasis, which is about Dante's Inferno, inspired by that, which, yeah, is obviously super interesting to me as an Italian-born person who has talked about Dante in high school throughout her education. So that's gonna be really interesting as well. But Babel, definitely recommend. On the other hand, another book of hers, Yellowface, that one I didn't really enjoy. I'm gonna give that one 2.5 stars. I read this with my in-person book club, and I just had a feeling it was really repetitive. It had this one message that, again, it kept repeating, and I was like, yes, I get the message, like, you don't have to make it this obvious. So I don't know what happened with this book with R.F. Kuang. She's so smart, she's so eloquent and writes great books, but this one just wasn't it for me, and the rest of the book club also didn't really enjoy it. So yeah, I don't know. That one, I don't get the hype. No, sorry, I have to say, it wasn't for me. Last but not least, the Housemaid series by Freida McFadden. I'm gonna give this one a solid 4. I quite enjoyed it. Is it the most intricate, detailed, crazy psychological thriller? No, probably not. But I think, again, it's a nice introduction to that genre. I would call it a popcorn thriller. It's really easy to read. The chapters are short. It keeps you guessing. There's lots of cliffhangers at the end of chapters, so you just want to keep reading. But it just, yeah, I mean, the plot twist, the ending was quite predictable. So, you know, it's a nice read, but it's also not the most crazy, mind-blowing thriller ever. So I'm gonna give it a 4. Good read, not a perfect book. So here we are. This is my ranking. No 1 stars actually, which I find interesting. A few 5 stars, lots of them in the middle field around the 3 stars, which I would say is probably the experience that I had with BookTok in general, like I said in the beginning. Some books are fantastic, really love the execution, the idea, and I think they deserve the hype that they're getting. Others, again, I don't know, I just feel like they weren't for me, and if they were for you, let me know in the comments. Maybe I need to reread some of these to just get it, to get the concept, to get the book. But yeah, this is my ranking. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave me a comment below. Let me know about the books that you've read, which ones you enjoyed, which ones you didn't enjoy, which ones you think are worth the hype, and which ones aren't worth the hype. And I'll see you next time in another video.